Okay. Hello, everyone. My name is Maria Fotopoulou, and I'm an electrical engineer at the Center for Research and Technology, Hellas. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. So I'm here today to present a research that we have produced with the cooperation of the University of West Attica and the National Technical University of Athens. And the subject is the optimal combination of photovoltaic systems and wind generators in the power network. So, to begin with, power networks have changed over the past few decades from fossil fuel-based and unidirectional and passive into smart grids with high renewable energy sources penetration, active networks, and the most popular renewable energy sources that you find out there are the photovoltaics and the wind generators. But they also have a little challenges, the most important of which are their stochastic production, the mismatch with the load profile, and the consequent need, in some cases, to install storage systems. So the question is, what would be the optimal renewable energy sources combination to be installed in a power network? So this subject has been studied by other researchers as well, but in most cases you find the solutions to be either case-specific or not mathematically optimized, or in some other cases non-open source. So, the purpose of this research is to expand the literature that already exists and the platforms that already exist by proposing a novel algorithm for the selection of the optimal combination of photovoltaic systems and wind generators to be installed in a power network so that it meets the renewable energy sources penetration target and minimizes the mismatch between the production and the demand. Regarding the methodology, here you can see the flowchart of the proposed algorithm. The input, the basic input, is the load profile. This is measurements, let's say, from the SCADA system or from any other database. Ideally, the larger time interval that you have, the better for this algorithm. The second input is the renewable energy sources penetration target. Currently, the most popular target is 40% RES penetration by 2030, proposed by the European Commission. And the last part of the input is the photovoltaic and wind generator estimated production per megawatt. So all of this input is used by the nonlinear programming optimizer, which is the core of this algorithm, and the output is the optimal size of photovoltaic systems and the size of the wind generators to be installed. Of course, the optimizer has its own objective function. In this case, the objective function is the minimization of the surplus production by the photovoltaics and the wind generators. So you have the decision variables. The first one is the size of the photovoltaic systems, and the second one is the size of the wind generators. And the objective function is subjected to constraints. The first two constraints, of course, are the use of the photovoltaics and the wind generators. So the power produced by the photovoltaic can either be directed to the load or exceeded for each time step. And the same goes for the production of the wind generators. The wind generator production can cover the load and can also exceed it for each time step. For all time steps, for the sum of the time steps, the photovoltaic production that feeds the load plus the wind generator production that feeds the load must meet a certain renewable energy sources target value, let's say 40%. And of course, at each time step you have the power balance, which means that the fuel-based production plus the photovoltaic production plus the wind generator production must be equal to the load. And finally, all of the variables are non-negative real numbers. So this is the mathematical formulation of the problem. This optimizer is abstract. This means that it can use any number of time steps as input. Furthermore, the optimizer is developed using PyOmo, which is a Python-based open source optimization modeling language. This means that all of this is open source. There are no hidden layers. There are no codes that cannot be let's say, revealed or used publicly. This is all open source, which is a major innovation of this algorithm. And the solver that we use is BONMIN, which utilizes a variety of nonlinear programming algorithms, which are exact when the objective function and the constraints are convex, which is true for this case. There is one optimal solution for this kind of problems. So we tested the proposed algorithm on an industrial/commercial district in Slovenia, and in figure 3 you can see the representative weekly load. The representative weekly load is about 2 terawatt-hours, and the rest target value for this case is equal to 40% of renewable energy sources penetration. Now, the analysis of this case comprises 842 variables. This is so because there are 2 decision variables, one for the size of the panels and one for the size of the wind generators, 336 variables for the photovoltaic production that feeds the load or exceeds it, because there is a new set for each time step and you have 1 week here, hence the number. You have another 336 variables for the wind generator production that either feeds the load or exceeds it. And finally, you have 168 variables for the fuel-based production that covers the demand when the renewable energy sources production is insufficient. And here you can see the results. In figure 4, you can see the energy mix provided by the proposed algorithm. In green, you can see the fuel-based production. In yellow, you can see the photovoltaics. And in blue, you can see the wind generators. So, according to the optimizer, the optimal photovoltaic installation would be equal to 12.44 megawatts, and it would cover 16% of the demand without having any surplus photovoltaic production. And for the wind generators, the optimal installation would be equal to 16.78 megawatts. It would cover 24% of the demand, and it would not have any surplus production either. So as you can see, you have 2 stochastic resources, and the thing is that even though they're both stochastic, you somehow manage to mitigate this because the photovoltaic proceeds during noon and the wind generators produces the rest of the day. So you can manage to have 40% renewable energy sources penetration without having any surplus renewable energy sources production, which means no need for curtailments, no need for storage systems. And you can see the value of this optimizer when you take extreme combinations into account. Let's say you don't want to have these 2 sources, you only want to have one of them, but still meet the renewable energy sources targets. Okay, this could be a problem. You might need storage. Why is that? Because in figure 6 you can see what happens when you only have wind generators and no photovoltaics. You would still get 40% renewable energy sources penetration out of the wind generators, but you would have surplus wind generator production equal to 11 megawatt hours. And this is a low number. It gets even worse when you have the photovoltaics, because when you have the photovoltaics, you would have to install 47.91 megawatts. You would still get 40% renewable energy sources penetration, but at what cost? You would also have 454 megawatt hours of surplus production, and you have to figure out what to do with that. So the thing is that without a combination, and even further, without the optimal combination, the surplus production rises, especially for the PVs, and this can be a problem. To conclude with, this research presents an optimization algorithm for the optimal selection of the size of photovoltaics and wind generators to be installed in a power network in order to meet the renewable energy sources targets of the current energy transition. This algorithm can serve the system operator as a planning tool or as a grid expansion tool. It has been tested on a power system in Slovenia, and it highlights the importance of having a combination of stochastic renewable energy sources by examining the extreme cases. The future steps would be, of course, the simulation of larger time intervals, let's say monthly or even better yearly time intervals, in order to get a more representative result. The enhancement of the solution's power system stability, let's say have a fixed proportion of fuel-based production for stability reasons, let's say, for example, 20% for each time step, just to be certain that the system will operate properly. And of course, we also aim to incorporate more kinds of renewable energy sources and expand the purpose of the algorithm with the addition of storage systems. So, thank you for your attention. Do you have any questions?